I'm Robert Ramsey, I'm an agricultural consultant with SEC Consulting working out the Ayr office. I'm here today as part of the Farm Advisory Service Grassland Productivity Series. We're back at Drumsmodden. Sam Robinson, who farms here, hosted the Controlling Rushes element of the Grassland Productivity Series for the Farm Advisory Service. Throughout 2023, Sam's been taking a very proactive approach to controlling rushes. Like all farms, as different fields have different issues, and some are more accessible than others, some are more productive than others. So we've been looking at all the different options available to controlling rushes on this farm. So one of them was a full reseed, so burn off, correct all the soil fertility issues, the drainage issues, and a full reseed. We then looked at simply spraying with MCPA plus liming, and then we also had to look at contact weed control through a weed wiper as well, using glyphosate. So rushes are a very common issue across all farms in the southwest of Scotland, in fact across the whole country. They're an annoying nuisance species which really hold back the yield of grass as well. They're also an indicator for poor fertility and poor crop performance as well. So when we know, or when there's a lot of rushes in a field, we also know there's an underlying issue with fertility affecting the grass growth as well. So in a world where we're looking to produce more from less, the rush is a real problem. And if we can control the rushes, we can ultimately, if we can grow more grass, we can control rushes. And if we grow more grass, we can carry more stock and increase our output per hectare. So we know if there's rushes in a field, there's also an underlying soil fertility issue that's also affecting grass. So we know if we can grow more grass, we'll have less rushes and ultimately will improve the efficiency of our overall production system. So we as consultants get asked a lot of questions about how do we control rushes, how do we make progress in this world. There's lots of theories, lots of different ways. Everybody's got the way that their dad did it or the way that they've read on the internet. We were quite keen to have a look at different options next to each other on the same farm to see what would actually have the most bang for buck, what would be the most economically viable option. Interestingly, what we've kind of concluded is it depends where you are on the farm. So in this field, the weed wiper proved particularly cost effective given that we used just over a litre of chemical to cover the ground that we did. And as you can see, there's been a significant impact on the rush population here, and something that a small amount of a secondary treatment next year should see us in a far better place. So that effectively, there's a relatively low cost machine delivering a very small amount of chemical in a very targeted approach, so it's environmentally sensitive and also really economical for the producer as well. On the other side of the farm, we were using more of a gold standard approach, bringing a field that's down at heel right up to full arable production. That obviously is a much bigger investment, a much more costly process, but as we can see from the weed wiper right through to that, across that whole spectrum, there's somewhere that fits every producer, whether you've got money to go and do a full reseed or whether you're strapped for cash and tight for money. You can also start at the entry level and make a reduction in these rush populations. And we know for sure if we get things right here, we will be financially better off down the line. Sam, you did a lot of work this summer. What can you describe roughly what you were doing and what you were trying to achieve?
Simply tidy the farm up, get rid of the rushes and get more grass growing and spending as little money in the process as we could at the time.
And the field we're in today, what does this field do? What size is it and what do you use it for?
There's 7 acres in this, and it's adjacent to a bit of rough ground where if it's a wet back end or something, we'll usually put cattle. It's tough, it can stand it. And this field's usually sacrificed because of that, because it's adjacent, but we would like to try and get more production out of it. In the summertime then it'll graze heifers.
This summer, what did you do in terms of rush control? What were the options that you selected?
We sprayed MCPA or we weed wiped with glyphosate. Personally, I think the weed wiper has had really good results. Possibly be the preferred method for the result that we've got.
And what about, so you've spread a lot of lime and improved soil fertility. What have you found in terms of grass growth over the period you've been here?
We were conventional milk production and then got an organic contract and were organic for 5-6 years. Put on lime, stopped sowing fertiliser, used our slurry more, and our soil has changed. and we can now grow grass.
It's attention to detail.
Well, it's the fact that we went organic and the farm went into shock, and grass growth was pretty terrible for a few years, but this last 2 years we're probably now growing as much grass as some of our conventional neighbours again, and we're able to fill our silage pits again, which was a problem there for some time.
Although you're applying organic principles, it's been a bit of a leap of faith to go back into chemistry for controlling.
Yes. We were really struggling, and we got an independent man involved with us who simply got us to apply sulphur, and we put on 2 kilos of sulphur per acre with a sprayer, and that really got us in business, and it really, well, that corrected the soil, helped it. We definitely started to grow grass again, and then things have picked up since that there.
At the same time as the sulphur, you were spreading a lot of lime as well.
Yeah.
pH would be on a journey, and
yeah.
and also,
But the sulphur did, the sulphur's the one that got us in business.
Yeah.
So it did more than anything else.
Yeah. And the slurry store.
And the slurry store, yes, and that's it, and just applying our slurry evenly with umbilicals over the whole farm. That's it, because it's the only tool we had to grow grass.
Yeah.
But we have a healthier farm,
yeah,
with healthier soil than we did.
Your reseeding block is another side of the farm. Can you describe what you did there and how that's gone for you?
There's an 18-acre block over there, again, low-lying, drainage issues whenever we came here, heavily covered in rushes, and we started to redrain it, redrain the wet bits, but it's quite a big job, and we've managed to reseed 5 to 6 acres, which looks like it's going to be in full production this year. It really looks like there'll be cows on it in April. It's a satisfying job, turning something that hasn't been productive into a decent piece of land.
Just to clarify, that field it was a fully productive field maybe 50 years ago,
yeah,
and it's just been neglected. It's a low-lying wet field, yeah, that's been neglected, and it's bringing that back into production. Which,
yeah, whenever we came here, there's a big burn goes down through the centre of it that hadn't been cleaned for years and years, and I'm assuming just that the drains simply silted up, simply because they weren't getting an outlet. And it just crept its way up and up and up the field until eventually it got to near the top in places.
So the field there, you've got, of the 18 acres, you've got 5 or 6 acres that's now drained,
yes,
reseeded in the system, good to go for next year. As part of this project, we've also sprayed off and done various treatments on the rest of it, so we should see a significant reduction in the rush population on the reseeded bit. What does next year, what's your plan going forward in terms of drains, and what might be holding you back?
What I think we should do is that we know there's a couple of bursts that are probably water's rising and running over, which is causing quite a bit of the problem. If we could just get them diverted to a drain, I think we should glyphosate it, the whole thing. And again, we'll not plough it because the tiles are too shallow in places. Simply disc it, grass seed it, and get a sward of young grass on it, with knowing full well that we are going to drain through that young grass, but there'll be 80% of that remaining part of the field that won't be touched. So we might as well, get it into better production, give it into a bit more heart, knowing again that we are going to damage some of it, and then once we've it finished, in a couple of years' time, simply disc it again, burn it off, disc it, and finalise it, finish it.
It's certainly Rome wasn't built in a day, no. But it's great to see that the worst of that field was the bit that you've done, yes, already, and you've made a significant improvement to it. So what we need to keep in mind is what's actually in the soil in terms of a seed bank. Yeah. So there's 80-100 years worth of rush seeds already in there, ready to go. So what you need to do now is get everything in your favour to get grass growing, to be competitive, so you can actually keep that in the rotation and keep the rushes out.
Yeah. Yes. And although I said we'll burn it off, after doing the organic farming for several years, we don't want to use a lot of chemicals. It's something we're not going to, if there's some weeds comes in it, so be it.
What will be interesting to see is how the role of sorting the drains and then using stock to improve it as well. So if we can reduce the rush population, feed the grass, we then land up carrying a few more animals on that field. You might even be grazing dairy cows on it in years to come.
We will be this year. the bit that we've done, the cows I'm sure will be on it in April.
And that in itself will be a big improvement for the sward as well. So all this work was carried out through the spring and summer of 2023. We're now standing here in March 2024 and we can see the senescence of the rush plants that we've treated. What we're not seeing is the lovely lush growth that we're going to see in the spring. So this field is now really well set up for the spring to have much more production in it than it did last year. There's more information on controlling rushes available on the Farm Advisory Service website.